There is something nobody tells you when you are trying to understand an avoidant. And it is not about their childhood wounds, or their attachment style, or their fear of intimacy. It is something far more specific, far more haunting. It happens in the dark, when the world goes quiet, and when every wall they have spent years perfecting starts to crack just a little. What avoidants do when they miss you at night is so different from what you would expect that most people misread it entirely, and that misreading costs them everything. You have probably spent nights wondering if they think about you, wondering if they feel anything, wondering if behind all that distance, behind all that silence, there is a person who actually aches. And I want you to stay with me here, because what I am about to walk you through is going to reframe everything you thought you knew about the person who pulled away from you. Let me start with something that most people completely overlook. When an avoidant misses you, they do not sit with that feeling the way you do. You, when you miss someone, you feel it immediately. You lean into it. You might cry, reach out, write a long message, call a friend. The feeling moves through you like water. But the avoidant? The feeling hits them and they do not even recognize it at first. That is the first thing I want you to understand. The missing does not announce itself in them the way it does in you. What happens instead is this. They feel a kind of restlessness, a low, buzzing unease that starts somewhere around the chest and does not go away. They will try to name it something else. Boredom, fatigue. Maybe they convince themselves they are just tired. Maybe they tell themselves the day was difficult. But the body knows what the mind refuses to admit. And at night, when all the distractions are stripped away, the body starts talking louder. This is not a character flaw. This is not coldness. This is years of emotional architecture built specifically to keep vulnerability from entering. And right now, at night, alone, that architecture is under pressure it was never designed to handle. Because you left something in them, something that does not dissolve just because they told themselves it should. Now here is something I have observed in the psychology of avoidant individuals that is deeply misunderstood by the people who love them. Avoidants are not emotionally absent. They are emotionally overwhelmed. There is a profound difference between those two things, and the distinction matters enormously for what you are going through right now. When they were with you, the closeness felt threatening on a level they could not fully articulate. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you were too much or not enough, but because emotional intimacy for them was historically paired with pain, with loss, with the particular agony of needing someone who was not consistently there. So the nervous system learned something devastating early on. It learned that love is dangerous, that closeness leads to hurt, that needing someone is the beginning of being destroyed. And so they built the walls, not to keep you out specifically, to keep that old specific pain out. You just happen to be on the other side of those walls. But at night, those walls breathe differently. The cognitive defenses that run all day, the constant redirecting of thought, the rationalizations, the numbness they maintain through busyness and self-sufficiency, all of that requires energy. And at night, the energy runs low. The guard comes down, not because they chose it, because the mind and body are exhausted from keeping it up. So what actually happens? The first thing that tends to emerge when an avoidant is alone in the dark, missing you, is not longing in the romantic sense. It is something more animal than that. It is the memory of your presence. Not even specific conversations or moments necessarily, just the felt sense of you. The way space felt different when you were in it. The particular quality of safety that your presence created, even if they never told you it created safety. Even if they acted in ways that suggested the opposite. The body holds memory differently than the mind does. The mind can rationalize a breakup, a withdrawal, a decision to create distance. The mind is very good at building arguments for why the distance was necessary, why the relationship was complicated, why they are better off in the quiet. But the body does not speak in arguments. The body speaks in sensation. And at night, the sensation of your absence is loud in a way that nothing in their waking hours prepares them for. This is not small. I want you to really hear this. The avoidant who seems unbothered, who seems to have moved on with alarming ease, who has not reached out, who has maintained the silence with what looks like discipline, is fighting something at night that you cannot see. And the fact that you cannot see it does not mean it is not real. It means it is deeply private, deeply protected. because showing you that they miss you would require a vulnerability they have not yet learned how to survive. Here is where it gets psychologically interesting. When the missing becomes undeniable, and it does become undeniable for them, the avoidant does not move toward it, they move around it. This is one of the most characteristic patterns I have seen in people who operate from this attachment style, and it is also one of the most painful things to witness, because you can see the hunger in them, even as they maneuver to avoid feeding it. They will do something that looks like nothing. They might get up, move through their space, make something to drink, look out a window. These small mechanical actions are actually a form of emotional regulation. They are creating physical movement to interrupt the emotional current running through them. Because the emotional current, if they sat still in it, would require them to feel the full weight of what they have lost or pushed away. And that full weight is something their nervous system has been trained for years to treat as a threat. You might wonder, how can missing someone feel like a threat? But that is exactly what happens when your earliest experiences taught you that emotional need leads to devastation. The missing and the threat become the same signal. The longing and the fear wear the same face. And now I want to talk about something that you, specifically, deserve to understand. You have probably questioned yourself, repeatedly. You have probably asked yourself if you imagined the connection, if the moments of closeness were real, if you meant anything at all to this person, because their behavior, especially the pulling away, the silence, the deactivation, made you feel like you were writing meaning into something empty. You were not. What I have seen, and what the psychology consistently shows, is that avoidants attach deeply. They just attach quietly. They attach in ways they do not advertise, and often in ways they themselves do not consciously acknowledge until the connection is gone or at risk. The attachment is real. The feeling is real. The missing is real. It is the expression of all of that which gets distorted, suppressed, rerouted. You are not someone who misread things. You are someone who was reading a person who had learned to write in disappearing ink. There is a specific thing that happens deep into the night for an avoidant who is missing someone, and I think it is the most important thing in this entire conversation. The thoughts become circular. They will think about you, then catch themselves thinking about you, then create a reason why thinking about you is pointless or self-destructive, and then circle back to thinking about you anyway, round and round. This is not indifference. This is someone in a war with themselves, and the war is not about you. The war is between the part of them that genuinely wants connection, that is drawn to you, that feels the loss of you as a real and present ache, and the part of them that has decided, on a cellular level, that wanting that connection means vulnerability, and vulnerability means pain, and pain is something to be avoided above everything else. The avoidant is not winning that war at night. I want you to know that. The part that misses you is strong. It does not go away just because they have trained themselves to act as if it does. The stillness of 3 in the morning has a particular way of stripping people down to what they actually feel. And what the avoidant actually feels, in those unguarded hours, is something much closer to the person you always sensed was in there. The one underneath the deflection, the one underneath the logic and the distance, the one who, when you held them a certain way, or laughed at something a certain time, or looked at them without expectation, let you in for a moment. That person is the one doing the missing, not the defended version, not the one who sends short messages or creates distance or pulls back the moment things get real. The one underneath all of that, the one they spend enormous energy trying to protect you from ever seeing too clearly. And at night, that person is awake, quiet, holding something they do not have a language for. And if you could see it, you would recognize it immediately, because it looks exactly like love. Here is what nobody prepares you for. You can understand someone's psychology completely. You can read every article, sit with every explanation, and still lie awake feeling like you are the only one hurting. Like the understanding lives in your head, but the pain lives everywhere else. And that gap between knowing and feeling is one of the loneliest places a person can exist. So before we go further, I want you to know that what you are carrying is real. The confusion is real. The push and pull you felt with this person was not something you invented. And the fact that you are still trying to understand them, still trying to make sense of it, that says something about the depth of what this was for you. Now let us go deeper. Because the night is long for an avoidant who is missing you. And what happens in the hours after that first wave of restlessness is something far more layered than most people ever get to understand. After the avoidant has moved through the initial unease, after the small mechanical actions, the getting up, the walking, the attempting to redirect, something shifts. The body settles back into stillness. And in that stillness, the mind does something that is equal parts fascinating and devastating to witness from a psychological standpoint. It edits. The avoidant mind, when flooded with missing, begins to reconstruct the relationship, but not honestly, not in the way you might replay things, sitting with the full texture of what was good and what was painful. The avoidant replays with a very specific filter. They amplify the moments where they felt crowded, where they felt like the relationship was asking too much, where the intimacy felt like pressure rather than warmth. They bring those moments to the front. They hold them up like evidence. This is not cruelty. This is survival. This is a mind doing the only thing it knows how to do when the feeling of missing someone becomes unbearable. It builds a case against the missing. It tries to justify the distance retroactively, because if the distance was justified, then the longing is irrational, and if the longing is irrational, it can be dismissed, and if it can be dismissed, they do not have to feel it. But here is the thing about that editing: it does not work, not fully, not at night, because underneath every curated memory they use to reinforce the wall, there is an unedited version, and the unedited version keeps surfacing. The moment you made them laugh in a way they were not expecting, the particular way you said their name, the time you stayed when they expected you to leave, those moments do not get filed neatly away. They live in a different part of the mind entirely, the part that operates beneath logic, the part that does not respond to argument. I want to talk about something that I find deeply important for you to understand right now. The avoidant is not thinking about you the way you think about them, and I do not mean that in the way that stings. I mean it structurally, neurologically. The way they process emotional memory is fundamentally different from how you do, and that difference is the source of so much misunderstanding between these two kinds of people. When you miss someone, the missing tends to move in one direction, toward them. You think about what you want to say, what you wish had gone differently, what you would do if they reached out. Your longing has a vector. It points somewhere. When an avoidant misses someone, the missing moves in a circle. It does not point outward. It turns inward. It becomes self-referential. They are not primarily thinking about what they want to say to you. They are thinking about what the fact that they miss you means about them, what it reveals, what it requires, whether they are capable of being the person that the missing seems to be asking them to become. This is an exhausting and isolating experience that they would never describe to you in those terms, because describing it would require them to admit that they are missing you, and admitting that they are missing you is, in their internal architecture, a form of surrender they are not yet built to make. There is a particular hour in the night where something else happens. I have come to think of it as the undefended hour. It is different for everyone, but it tends to arrive somewhere between deep quiet and the very first suggestion of morning. The exhaustion has gone past the point where maintaining the emotional walls feels possible. The internal arguments have run out of steam. The editing, the rationalizing, the case building against the longing, all of it requires a kind of mental energy that simply runs dry. And in that undefended hour, the avoidant feels you. Not a version of you they have constructed or curated or reduced. You, the actual weight and color of who you are to them. The specific and irreplaceable quality of the connection that existed between you. This is the moment where some avoidants will pick up their phone, not necessarily to contact you, sometimes just to hold it, to exist in the space between reaching out and not reaching out. That space is enormous for them. It contains years of learned behavior, years of self-protection, years of the belief that needing someone is the first step toward being abandoned by them. They might open a conversation. They might read old messages without responding. They might type something and delete it before it becomes real. And every single one of those actions, even the deleted ones, even the ones that never reach you, are expressions of something genuine, something they are not yet equipped to deliver, but genuine nonetheless. I need you to sit with that for a moment, because I know how it feels to be on the receiving end of someone's silence and interpret that silence as absence, as not caring. But there is a very specific kind of silence that is actually full, that is actually dense with feeling, and the silence of an avoidant at night, in that undefended hour, is one of the fullest silences that exists. Now I want to address something directly, because I think you need to hear it, and I think it is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in this entire attachment conversation. The avoidant's inability to reach out when they miss you is not a reflection of how much you matter to them. It is a reflection of how much you matter to them. Read that again slowly. The more someone matters to an avoidant, the more terrifying the vulnerability becomes. A connection that is casual, a relationship that does not reach into their deeper self, that is easy to maintain. There is no threat there. But you, if you are someone who got close, someone who saw underneath the performance, someone whose absence now creates that low, persistent ache in their chest at 3 a.m, you represent something their nervous system has learned to treat as the most dangerous thing in the world. Real attachment, real need, the real possibility of real loss. And so the silence is not emptiness. The silence is fear wearing a very convincing mask. Here is another dimension of what happens at night that I want you to understand, because it speaks directly to something you have probably felt in your own body. The avoidant, in missing you, does not only think, they feel it physically. The chest heaviness that will not resolve, a kind of hollow sensation that no amount of repositioning or distraction fully addresses. The particular loneliness of missing someone you chose to distance yourself from, or allowed yourself to drift away from, or pushed away in a moment of overwhelm, is a specific and deeply uncomfortable brand of alone, because it is a loneliness with an address. It is not the abstract loneliness of being unconnected to the world. It is the precise loneliness of a specific absence, your absence. And the body knows the difference. The body does not generalize. It knows exactly what is missing, and it makes that knowledge felt in very specific, very persistent ways. The avoidant lies there, or sits there, and the physical sensation of your absence moves through them like something looking for a place to land and finding nowhere to go, because they have not given it anywhere to go. They have not created a channel for it. Expression, vulnerability, reaching out, these are the channels through which that feeling would naturally move. But those channels have been, for most of their life, either blocked or never properly built. So the feeling circulates, it does not discharge, it just keeps moving through the body, finding no exit. And this is part of why the night is so difficult for avoidants, who are in a place of unacknowledged missing. They are not resting, they are containing something that wants very badly to be released. And now I want to talk about the thing that happens just before sleep finally comes, because it is perhaps the most revealing thing of all. When the mind is at the very edge of consciousness, when the cognitive defenses have genuinely surrendered to exhaustion, what surfaces is not what the avoidant has decided to feel. It is what they actually feel, unfiltered, unmanaged, without the architecture. And what surfaces, almost without exception, in the people I have observed, and in what the psychology of avoidant attachment consistently reveals, is a longing that is tender rather than complicated, a longing that is soft at the edges, that does not carry the weight of the fear or the rationalization or the case building that dominated the earlier hours of the night. Just the simple human ache of wanting someone near. That ache does not announce itself with drama. It does not arrive with clarity or resolution or the sudden motivation to change. It arrives quietly, the way true things tend to arrive, like something settling rather than something erupting. And in that half-conscious state, the walls are down completely, and what lives behind those walls is someone who misses you in a way that is uncomplicated by everything that makes them who they are in the waking world. That is the real them. Not the most important version, not the version that determines the relationship's future, but the real them, the one underneath the pattern, the one the pattern was built to protect. And they are missing you, quietly, completely, in the only hours when they are incapable of pretending otherwise. So now you know what the night looks like for them. You know about the restlessness, the circular thinking, the editing, the undefended hour, the physical ache that finds no exit. You have sat with all of that, and I imagine something in you feels a complicated kind of relief. The relief of being right, of knowing that what you sensed was real, that the connection was not a story you told yourself, that somewhere in the quiet of their night, you exist in them in a way they have never been able to fully say out loud. But relief is only half of what I want you to walk away with, because there is a second question underneath all of this, and it is the one that actually matters for your life right now. What do you do with this? Let me tell you something first before we get there. Something that took me a long time to understand about people who love avoidance, and something I think you need to hear before anything else. You have been doing something incredibly difficult without anyone acknowledging how difficult it is. Loving someone who cannot receive love in the way you give it. Staying present for someone whose every defense mechanism was designed to make you feel like leaving. Trying to reach a person who has spent their entire life becoming unreachable. That is not weakness. That is not desperation. That is one of the most quietly exhausting things a human being can do. And the fact that you are here, still trying to understand, still extending curiosity towards someone who may have given you every reason to simply be angry, that speaks to something in you that is worth honoring. You deserved more consistency than you got. You deserved someone who could meet your need for closeness without treating that need as a threat. Whatever you have told yourself in the darker moments, whatever story you have built about why their distance meant something about your worth, I want you to hear this clearly. Their walls were built long before you arrived. You did not build them, and you could not have dismantled them no matter how patient, how understanding, how perfectly you showed up. Now, the question of what you do with everything you now understand, because understanding the avoidance inner world is one thing, and it is genuinely useful. It removes the sting of the personal. It replaces the narrative of rejection with something closer to the truth, which is that what happened between you was not a verdict on your lovability. It was two people colliding at different stages of their emotional development, with different capacities for vulnerability and different relationships to the concept of need. But understanding alone does not tell you what to do next. And I think this is where most conversations about avoidant attachment fail the person who is actually hurting. They explain the psychology and then leave you sitting with the explanation, as if knowing why something happened is the same as knowing what to do about it. It is not. Here is the truth about avoidance and change, and I'm going to be honest with you rather than comfortable. The avoidant who misses you at night, the one we have been talking about through this entire conversation, that person is real. The feeling is real. The missing is real. But feeling something and being able to act on it are two entirely different capacities. And the gap between those two things, in an avoidant individual, can be vast. The missing does not automatically become growth. The ache does not automatically become a decision to show up differently. An avoidant can miss you profoundly and still, when morning comes and the defenses rebuild themselves with the daylight, revert to every pattern that created the distance in the first place. Not because they are broken, not because they do not care, but because the nervous system does not reorganize itself based on nighttime feelings alone. It reorganizes through sustained, deliberate, often painful work, through confronting the original wound rather than just feeling its echoes. Some avoidants do that work. They reach the point where the cost of the walls becomes higher than the fear of what lives outside them, where the loneliness of their own making becomes more unbearable than the vulnerability of genuine connection, where the missing you at night becomes a force loud enough to override the patterns of a lifetime. Those avoidants show up differently, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. And when they do, the transformation is real and it is earned. But some do not, and no amount of your patience, your understanding, your willingness to wait in the uncertain space of their becoming can determine which kind of avoidant you are dealing with. That is the hardest sentence in this entire conversation. Their growth is not something you can love into existence. So what does all of this mean for you, specifically, tonight, in your own quiet hours? It means you are allowed to hold two things at once. You are allowed to know that they miss you, and also know that their missing is not enough on its own. You are allowed to feel tenderness toward their struggle, and also recognize that their struggle does not obligate you to wait indefinitely in a space of uncertainty. You are allowed to understand their fear, and also honor your own hunger for someone who can show up in the daylight, not just ache for you in the dark. This is not an either-or. Compassion for them does not require self-abandonment from you. Understanding their psychology does not mean minimizing what their behavior cost you. Both things are true simultaneously. They are a person in genuine pain, doing their best with tools that were never adequate for the love they encountered in you. And you are a person who deserves a love that does not require you to become a detective of someone else's hidden feelings. There is something that happens to people who love avoidance for long enough, And I want to name it because I think it might be living in you right now. You begin to shrink, not all at once, slowly, quietly. In the same way the avoidant built their walls slowly, you begin to make yourself smaller. You stop asking for what you need because asking led to withdrawal. You start interpreting their silences as communication and calibrating yourself to fit within them. You become fluent in a language made entirely of absences, and you call it intimacy, because it is the closest thing to intimacy that was available. And somewhere in the process of all that shrinking, you lost track of the version of yourself that knew, without question, what you deserved. The version that had not yet been trained by this particular relationship to treat breadcrumbs like a meal. That version of you is still there. It did not disappear. It got quiet, the way things get quiet when they are not being fed. But it is there. And it knows things your current exhausted self has temporarily forgotten. It knows what it feels like to be with someone who reaches for you in the daylight as well as the dark, who says the thing instead of deleting it, who finds your need for closeness something to move toward rather than something to manage. Now I want to bring this full circle, because everything we have covered, the restlessness, the editing, the undefended hour, the physical ache, the circular missing, all of it points to something that I think reframes this entire situation in a way that might surprise you. The avoidant is not the only one who has been living behind walls. You have built some of your own, perhaps not the same kind, perhaps not built from the same original wound. But somewhere in this dynamic, you learn to protect yourself too. You learn to manage your needs, to downregulate your own desire for closeness so that it did not overwhelm someone who experienced closeness as threatening. You learn to become the stable one, the understanding one, the one who could hold space for someone else's emotional chaos while quietly starving for someone to hold space for yours. And that is its own kind of armor, built with different materials than theirs, but armor nonetheless. The question now, as you sit with everything you have come to understand tonight, is not only what do you do about them, the question is, what do you do about you? What does the version of you that stopped shrinking actually need? Not in relation to them, just for yourself, in your own life, in your own becoming. Because here is the final thing I want to leave you with, and it is perhaps the most important thing in this entire conversation. Their nighttime missing is about them. It is a signal from their own interior, a message from the part of them that knows, somewhere beneath all the defense, that what they had with you was real and rare and not easily replaced. That missing is their work to do something with. It is not yours to manage or decode or wait patiently beside. Your journey is different. Your journey is about returning to yourself, about remembering what you feel like when you are not bent into the shape of someone else's limitations, about learning to sit in your own quiet hours without filling them with the question of what they are feeling. Because you have spent enough time in their interior. You have been a thoughtful and generous visitor to the landscape of their psychology, and now it is time to come home to your own. The avoidant will do what they will do. They will miss you in the dark, and either find the courage to cross toward you in the light, or they will not. That part is genuinely not in your hands. What is in your hands is the decision about how long you stand at a door that has not opened, and whether the waiting is costing you something you cannot afford to keep paying. You are not too much. You were never too much. You were exactly the right amount for someone who was ready. And the question worth sitting with now is not whether they will ever be ready. The question is whether you are willing to make your life smaller while you find out. That answer only you can give. But I hope after everything we have walked through tonight, you give it honestly, not from fear, not from the hunger of the missing, but from the clearest, most unhurried part of yourself, the part that has always known what you deserve, the part that knew, even on the nights when you doubted everything else, that the love you are capable of giving is worth receiving in full, not in pieces, not in the dark, not in deletion and silence and almost, in full.